Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you as is usual. So for this one we're going to go to the oldest craft brewery in Scotland, and if you know anything about it you'll know that that's Broughton Ales from Biggar down in the Scottish border region. So tonight we're going to have a taste of the 6.2 IPA, which I've heard is a very good beer. And I have to give a special thanks to the guys at Broughton Brewery. I think it was Brett who sent me all the different beers from them, and I mean they saw my review of the Old Jock Ale and seemed to really enjoy it, so they sent me, I think it was 10 different beers. One of them was a mystery beer, so I need to ask them exactly what they'd like me to do in the review of that one. And they also gave me this nice little kind of goblet glass here, which is pretty cool, so you will see this guy appearing in some random reviews going forward, and of course there will be more Broughton reviews for you in the quite near future. Actually, I'm going to try and rattle through these over the next little while. But as is usual then with my beer reviews, I will take you through a brief history of the brewery if you like. It's not too long, but as always, if you want to just simply go to the tasting, fast forward a few minutes into the video and you will catch that. The brewery website is in the video description for you below, along with the link to my other Broughton Ale reviews, and these will be added to in the future, like I say. But the Broughton Brewery was founded in 1979 by David Younger and James Collins in a former abattoir in the small village of Biggar in the Scottish border region. Now, Broughton Ales is regarded as the first Scottish microbrewery, and they marketed themselves to customers looking for a craft beer experience as an alternative to the mass-produced lagers and export beers, and this worked very well in the early days. Bear in mind that 1979 of course is very early in the craft beer movement, even talking by American standards. These guys are the oldest craft brewery in Scotland, but I think the likes of Anchor and things like that in America were starting to take off at that kind of time as well. But Collins and Younger actually released their first beer, which was the Green Mantle Ale, to great success, and the brewery became very well known throughout Scotland, and that beer was in fact so popular that the locals in Biggar started to refer to the brewery as Green Mantle Brewery, and a lot of the older guys in Scotland who are craft beer fans kind of consider it a cult classic. My dad actually kind of seems to know this beer very well and really enjoys it, so I will be reviewing that one for you. That will probably be done quite soon, and that will be a special video, that one, and you'll see why I'm going to do a Scottish beer challenge, and that's going to be video number 1, so keep an eye out for that one. But the Green Mantle Ale helped greatly increase the demand for sort of small batch brewed beer in Scotland, and the brewery actually decided to further expand their range, and that was with the Old Jock Ale, and I've reviewed that for you already. They also added the Merlin's Ale and the Scottish Oatmeal Stout, and each of these beers were actually named with a well-known character from the Scottish border region. Now in 1995 the brewery underwent a change in ownership, and it was taken over by Giles Litchfield, who introduced the Beers with Character moniker for a series of 10 bottled ales, and he actually wanted to increase the exports of the brewery as well, and this began in 1996, and the brewery has obviously been growing ever since. But today the brewery actually exports to Italy, France, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Canada, the USA and Japan, and they produce 8 bottled beers, 10 permanent cask ales and over 15 different seasonal beers, so keep an eye out for all their things. Just to list a few of these beers for you, in fact, you've got the Merlin's Ale, which is a bitter, Black Douglas, which is a strong bitter, Border Gold, which is a golden ale, Oatmeal Stout, which of course one of the very first ones there, Exciseman's 80 Shilling, which is a strong biller, the Gilly, which is a bitter, Green Mantle, which is a bitter, and they also have an organic lager as well. And you also have this guy here, the IPA, and the Old Jock Ale, which is a Scotch ale as well. So let's get on to the tasting of this guy. As I said, I'm really looking forward to actually trying this one. I'll just bring up the camera, let you have a little quick look at the bottle art on this one. As you can see, it's just it's the sort of typical Broughton one, the guy on his horse at the bottom, and you've got, they all have a sort of different image in here. Usually it's the character, but this one wasn't named after a character, but it says it's hopped with Chinook, Columbus and Cascade, and it's also, I think, hopped at the end with Pacific Jade hops. The malt base in this guy is Pale Ale and Crystal, and they've got a special unique yeast strain that they use for this guy. There you can see the label there. The bottle cap on this one is just plain, and if I remember rightly, that was also the case with the Old Jock Ale, but it's a nice one. I'd really like how they present their beers, and it's quite a fitting sort of a presentation, if you like, when you consider that they are the oldest craft brewery in Scotland. I'm not sure how well you can see, I'll just bring up the light, but there's a nice little bit of glasswork on the bottle there. It's just some nice hop cones and flowers and stuff like that, so it's really nicely presented. So let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting. As I mentioned to you, it's a 6.2% IPA, dry hopped or hopped with Pacific Jade, Chinook, Cascade and Columbus. I think they're all American hops actually. So you can see a nice smoky opening, and we'll get this guy into the glass. pouring really nicely actually. I'll need to only take about half of it, so I will only be doing a sort of smaller beer on this one. I can maybe get a little bit more in later on, right enough, but we'll take a little look at the colour right now. So as you can see, it's actually, well, very, very clear. I'm used to the IPAs being just a little bit hazy, but this guy is really, really clear. It's a nice kind of darkish orange amber colour. Very, very light actually. I was expecting it to be dark. Most of the Broughton beers I've seen before they tend to be very dark in colour, so this is quite interesting, this one, but it's very clear. If I put my fingers behind it, you can just see on the camera there, you can see through it, so it is quite transparent. You've got a nice 2-finger frothy white head there. It's actually maybe more of a cream head in honesty, but very nice. Look, it's poured very nicely actually. There's a lot of carbonation in there too, so I'm guessing this kind of would be quite a light-bodied and crisp one, but we'll soon find out. I've said that before about beers, and the body has kind of surprised me a little bit. So let's give it a smell and just see how we get on here. But it's very malty actually. It's very malty, but it's very fruity at the same time. You're getting a lot of nice kind of citrusy character in there. Actually smells like you're getting quite a bit of orange out it within that citrusy character, but there is a little bit of tropical fruit mixing in with it as well. If I remember rightly, that's the sort of thing you get from the Pacific Jade hop, but don't quote me on that. But there's a nice kind of sweet caramel and malty biscuit base to it as well that's coming out quite a lot. It's not, for an IPA, it is a bit more malty than you would expect actually, I would say. But it's you know, it smells really nice. It doesn't smell like some of these sort of American style brewed IPAs. It does smell a little bit more malty, which is what you would kind of think with more of sort of English IPA, if you like. But I'm sure it'll be a brilliant beer. Broughton, brilliant brewery. So let's get into this guy and see how we get on with the tasting. Yeah. Very different from the IPAs I've had before. It actually follows the aroma very well. And the first impression I'm getting of this guy, it does have a kind of huge kind of bitterness at the end of it, which is really nice. And on the back of the bottles actually, it does give you a kind of idea. It's got this scale, and on the top you get the bitterness, and on the bottom you get the malty character, and it's got a little arrow that shows you where on a kind of scale of like 1 to 10 roughly would you expect the kind of malt base and prominence of the hops as well. And this one is supposed to be quite bitter, and it certainly is. But yeah, I'd say that this guy opens up definitely with the more malty flavours, and then the sort of fruity and hoppy bitterness comes out in the end. I think it's actually quite aromatic. It's got just a nice little bit of kind of aromatic-y spice coming out and just sitting in the middle of the tongue there. But you're getting a nice kind of weakly caramel, mainly a biscuity malt base in this one. It's got a nice kind of sweet sort of cookie. It actually reminds me a little bit of the kind of Maryland cookies that you get in the shops. It has this kind of nice sweet biscuity malt base, so really, really nice beer. But yeah, you've got a really nice sort of spicy aromatic bitterness at the end. There's quite a bit of fruit in there. It does have a nice little bit of citrus in it, but that blends very well with the kind of aromatic flavours in my opinion. And I think there is a little bit of the kind of sort of sour fruitiness that you would expect from grapefruit, but there is definitely a citric element to it. That the bitter characters, I think, sort of kind of blend very well into a big sort of bitter blast, and that really lasts into the aftertaste quite a lot. But I think there is perhaps a little bit, you're getting a little bit more of the fruits coming around the edge of the tongue, and that sort of aromatic-y character is sticking right in the middle, and you've got just a little bit of that kind of cookie sweetness just sitting there on the front of the tongue as well. But yeah, you have this sort of yeasty sort of slightly spicy cookie malt base, and that just kind of, it comes in and fades away, and then in the aftertaste at the back of the tongue you get that sort of hoppy bite coming out of it again. It's really interesting for an IPA actually. It's different from a lot of the ones I've tried before. Like I've said quite repeatedly in this video actually, it's a beautiful beer. You're not going to be disappointed with anything that Broughton produce, I think, based on what I've tasted already. I've had a few of the cask ales, and this is only my second bottle from them actually, but everything I've come across so far, you know, it's been top notch. The mouthfeel of this one What I would say about it is actually quite oily, this one. I think you might get the idea from this one that it's a little bit light-bodied. I would say it's more of a mid-bodied beer. It is actually very oily, I would say. And I do like that mouthfeel. It helps kind of bring out the malt base a little bit better. But at the same time, it does help bring in the sort of transition to the hoppy flavours a bit better as well, as it sort of thins out as it passes over the tongue. But it's got a hugely bitter character to it, and it's quite dry in the finish as well. And you get just a little bit of alcohol warmth with this one, and that's another typical sort of trait of Broughton beer, in my opinion. You just get this nice little bit of warmth. And of course, with Scotland being generally quite a cold and rainy country, it kind of makes sense that you've got a little bit of this coming out. But at 6.2%, it's sort of mid-range, I guess, or for an IPA, if you like. So kind of right in the middle there. It complements it very well. But overall, it's a really nice IPA, and if you like it, if you want something that's a little bit different from the American IPAs, this is definitely one to go for. And with it being the oldest kind of craft brewery in Scotland, a lot of people always talk about Brewdog and things like that, but these guys were around for a hell of a lot longer than Brewdog, and they do produce some really, really nice beer. They export to a lot of different countries, so you know, definitely check them out. And this one definitely has that nice interest. It has something a little bit unique about it, with that kind of nice sort of cookie biscuity malt base in there, mixing with the hops. Even the hop character of this one is quite unique. It's quite an aromatic, citric and kind of weakly grapefruit one. So it's a really interesting blend, this beer. That's what I can really say about this one. It's really nice, and if you get the chance, I would highly recommend you try it. So I hope you found this beer review informative. As always, please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it yourself. But thanks again for watching, and your support is much appreciated. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I will be reviewing more Broughton Ale stuff in the very near future. I think I've got another 8 or so, 6, 7, 8 bottles or so to review of these guys. But thanks again for watching, and I will catch you soon with more beer reviews. Cheers.